Okay, so this part is going to get us to come up with a rule, then create a table of values and plot our coordinates. So in this case, we have a rule about scrambled eggs. So for scrambled eggs, you need 2 eggs per person plus 2 extra. Okay, so we can use that information to write out a table of values that we can then use to create our coordinates. So I've gone ahead and copied out the number of people and eggs that we would need to make our scrambled eggs. And we're going to remember that our rule is, we're going to remember that our rule is that it's 2 eggs per person plus 2 extra, okay? And the number of people is my x value, and the number of eggs is my y value, okay? Now, if we look over here, so if I start with 0 people, I need 2 eggs per person plus 2 extra. So that means I need 0 eggs per person, but I also need 2 extra. So I'm going to start at, over here, 2. Okay? Now, if I have 1 person, that means I need 2 eggs plus 2 extra. So I'm going to add 2 eggs, and I'm going to have a value of 4. 2 people, I'm going to need 4 eggs plus 2 extra, gives me a value of 6. 3 times 2 gives me 6, plus 2 extra gives me 8. 4 times 2 gives me 8, plus 2 gives me 10. Okay, and we're going to keep going with this. We've got 5 times 2 gives us 10, plus 2 extra gives us 12. Okay, and our last value, 2, is going to be 2 times 6 gives us 12, plus 2 gives us 14. Okay, so now we have a table of values, and that can let us write out our coordinates. So our first coordinate is going to be 0, 2. That's our x and our y. Our next coordinate is going to be 1, 4. Okay, now we've got 2, 6. So what we're going to need to do next is we're going to need to plot those points. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a graphing app that I've got set up here. And you'll notice that I have a set of axes, and I've got 13 going up, and I've got a whole bunch going over, but I'm obviously not going to use all of that. So I'm going to zoom this in actually a little bit, because we don't need that much. This will work a little better. I'm just going to move it up so that we can see the x-axis. Perfect, excuse me. Then what we're going to do is we're going to plot our points. So our first point was 0, 2. So that point, we're going to look here, we're going to go 0, and we're going to go up 2. That's our first point. So remember, our x tells us how many we need to go across, our y tells us how many we need to go up. So if we look at our next one, it's going to be 1, 4. So we're going to go over 1, and we're going to go up 4. Okay, and next point's going to be 2, 6. So we're going to go over 1, up 2 from our last point, And again, we're going to do the same thing at 3, 8. Okay. That one ran away. Silly point. There we go. Okay, so once we've plotted our points, we've gotten to the point where now we're off our graph, so that's fine. We're going to stop there, and we're going to connect it, in this case, with a line, but in your case, you're going to draw a line through those points and with a ruler, and draw it out. So you want it to extend past the points that you're using, okay? And the reason we extend it past is so that we can use that information to predict values that aren't necessarily on our graph. So if I wanted to look at 5, I could zoom out and I could see what that value would be, okay? And that's a nice thing to remember when we're talking about graphs, why we do graphs, okay? So if we look here, so what they've done is they've used what's called a function machine. So let's take a look at this. I want to explain to you what those function machines look like. Okay, but basically what happens is you put in your x value, you do your first operation, and then whatever that value is goes into the second function machine and it gives you your y value. So if we look at our first coordinate, our x coordinate is 0. So 0 times 3 gives us 0. And then we add 2. So our y coordinate is going to be 2 because 0 plus 2 gives us 2. Okay? Now if I have 1, if I put in 1, and I multiply it by 3, that gives me an answer of 3. If I add 2 to that, then I get an answer of 5. Alright, and you'll see that down below. Okay, so I just want you to remember what those function machines look like and how we use them. Alright, because if we look over here, it's going to ask you to use them. Whoops, sorry, too far. It's going to ask them to use them, ask you to use them to fill in and graph some values. Okay? So in this case, all we need to do is take our x value and multiply it by 2 to get our y value. So you'll see 1 times 2 gives us 2, 2 times 2 gives us 4, 3 times 2 gives us 6, blah, 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 exactly. And then, sorry, not blah, 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 but just etc. And then you're going to plot them onto a set of axes that look like this. So anytime you see axes that are drawn like this, what I want you to do is copy them into your book exactly as they're done. So you'll see on this one, the x goes up by 1, so each line represents 1. But if we look at the y, each line represents 2. So that's a little bit different, but absolutely fine as long as we are consistent. Okay? Now, you're going to do the same thing with question 2. All right? Question 2 is going to ask you to multiply your x value by 2 and then add 1. So if we look at 0, 0 times 2 gives us 0, plus 1 gives us 1. Our y coordinate is going to be 1. 1 times 2 gives us 2, plus 1 gives us 3. Okay, and then you're going to plot those points. All right? And question 3, I'm going to get you to do as a challenge. Okay, but you're just going to be using a two-step function machine and filling in the table. Okay, and that's it for this bit.